Captain Midnight.
Whenever I talk about theatrical movie releases versus straight-to-streaming ones, I know there's a tendency in the comments to make the point that some of you don't like going to the theater anymore and would prefer to be able to stay home and just see everything available to them right away. And, I get it. I'm not going to dispute anyone's bad theater experiences. I go out of my way to avoid the biggest crowds when I go to the movies, and a lot of people's work schedules just prevent them from doing that. You have to put up with tons of people talking, people addicted to smartphones, all the rest of it. I understand how staying home with a big QLED TV might be your thing. Despite all of that, though, I have remained a massive cheerleader for the theatrical experience and hopeful that they can still hang on and stay alive. Not just because I love going to the theater, but also because of what streaming movies have slowly morphed into. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have been hitting the podcast circuit lately to promote their new Netflix movie, The Rip, and have shed some light on Netflix's thinking when it comes to making films for their platform. And I think it's super interesting. Honestly, pretty bleak stuff. So that's what I want to get into today. What Netflix wants from their productions, what that means for audiences, and where it could be taking the film industry as a whole. Now, I'd like to read your thoughts on Netflix and theaters down below. I'm interested. And if you want to like this video, it would definitely help out the channel and is always appreciated. So Matt Damon spoke recently about what Netflix asks for when making a movie for them. And I always find this fascinating when I hear someone behind the scenes get into the specifics of what they request. Most writers and directors in Hollywood are not Matt Damon. They're generally not super forthcoming about this kind of stuff, with a few exceptions, because why risk burning a bridge with Hollywood's biggest company? Matt Damon is not really in that position, so not maliciously or anything, he laid out a few things that they were looking for. The first is that for The Rip at least, they really wanted a big action scene in the first 5 minutes. If you're writing an old-fashioned 3-act screenplay, switch it up. It's not enough to build up to a big action set piece, we need to be in it right away. The reason for this is obvious. Netflix doesn't see their competition as other streamers here, they see it as TikTok, YouTube, and doom scrolling. They're begging for something that tears you away from that phone as soon as possible, or can be watched in the background behind it. I would love to get more details on just how far they take this philosophy. So in The Rip, the Netflix movie that Damon is promoting, it takes about 2 minutes for someone to get shot at. So it feels like they took the note. Let me compare two action movies as an example. The original Die Hard is one of the most beloved action films ever made, and it takes its time to get going. We spend a good stretch just with John McClane arriving in LA, awkwardly reconnecting with his wife at the Nakatomi Christmas party, and meeting some of the office staff before anything truly explosive happens. There's tension, but it's character tension, small interactions, and marital frustrations. It takes about 15 minutes for the action to really start. Would this be a problem for Netflix? I think there's a huge chance it would be. In 2026, it might be a lot to ask the audience to sit through those apparently oh-so-dull first few minutes before Gruber and the gang show up and the machine guns come out. But do they take that philosophy even further? I get it, Die Hard is an old movie at this point. Action movies are paced differently now. So what about the first John Wick? That movie is about as streamlined and action-centric as studio cinema gets. I mean, come on, it's John Wick. But even it doesn't really start with pure action. It wants to hook you too, which is why we start at the end of the story after the fallout of Wick's mission. But it still really holds off on the action. We get time with him grieving his wife, receiving the dog, trying to live a quiet life before things get ripped away from him. All the action is built on a foundation of slower, moodier scenes that establish why we care. And again, it takes around 15 minutes to really get there. It's not a half hour of non-stop headshots from the jump, and it absolutely benefits from that. I know this might seem arbitrary, but I picked these for a reason. Die Hard and John Wick are both held up as gold standards of tight, efficient, no-nonsense action filmmaking. They're not austere dramas. They're not trying to be elevated takes on the genre. They are the definition of fast-paced, accessible, crowd-pleasing action movies. If Die Hard and John Wick would not meet your criteria for producing an action movie, I mean, what are we even doing here? Another comment Damon made in that interview about Netflix is even more damning to me, with Netflix apparently saying it wouldn't be terrible if you reiterated the plot 3 or 4 times in the dialogue because people are on their phones while they're watching. This both makes complete sense and makes me really depressed. Writing exposition in a screenplay is difficult. Doing it artfully is almost impossible. So for Netflix to need the screenwriter to go back to it over and over again because they can't trust viewers to actually be watching the thing on their TV is just so grim. This kind of thing can't help but make the final product worse. Now honestly, it doesn't make The Rip awful or anything. I thought the movie was very watchable, but I think this is objectively a terrible trend, catering only to viewers who are the least interested in actually engaging with the movie they're making. Now, Ben Affleck was also in this interview, and he's playing the good cop. I mean, they are here promoting a Netflix movie after all. He says that this doesn't seem to apply to every Netflix product, pointing to Adolescence as an example of something they put out that doesn't seem forced to abide by notes like this. And you know what? That's a fair point. But I think it mostly says something about Netflix and their larger versus smaller scale productions. Adolescence was not a cheap show. It was not a Tubi original. But it sure as hell didn't come with the Rip's price tag either. And when I look at the shows I've liked most from them in the last decade or so, it tends to be stuff like Tim Robinson's show, inexpensive products that they throw money at and are okay with experimenting on because the downside is just not that risky. But the era of their most expensive stuff, being like funding a pricey Scorsese movie like The Irishman, I think is just behind us. When it comes to their more expensive films now, they have time and time again played it as safe and risk-averse as possible, giving us the algorithmic-driven nonsense of Red Notice or the awful Electric State. Now, there are exceptions, especially when they're going for a very clear prestige Oscar play, like All Quiet on the Western Front. But when it comes to good old-fashioned popcorn and genre movies, the kind of thing that used to be the lifeblood of theaters, like The Rip or Gray Man, I think that's when the algorithm notes really come out in full force. Now, The Rip survives these better than most. It is not a Red Notice situation, thankfully. But it's a really worrying trend, and one that waters down the final product to feeling like a mediocre old USA Network show a lot of the time. Now, you might be typing in the comments, okay fine, but Netflix is correct. This is what people clearly want. Look at the later seasons of Stranger Things. They're chock full of this kind of thinking, and that's Netflix's biggest hit. And you know what? You're right. I don't have a great response to that, and I have no idea what filmmakers at large are supposed to do with an audience that wants to half-watch the movie they made while also scrolling through videos of AI dogs or whatever. I really don't. Though I will point out that this last season of Stranger Things seemed to have a lot of people really out on that style of writing. I feel like there's this growing divide between prestige Oscar stuff, where filmmakers are allowed to treat the audience with intelligence, and a lot of recent stuff in the genres that I love, that's being pushed farther and farther into the lowest common denominator. Because that's what the numbers seem to be telling the big studios. I hope filmmakers can find a way to push back on that, and I think they are, at least in theaters. Like look at Dune 2 or Sinners, especially in comparison to a lot of streaming movie output. But when it comes to making Netflix genre movies, it seems like a tough balancing act that more are failing at than succeeding. There's always been bad movies out there, that's nothing new, but this need to reformat the structure of film and add in tons of repetition on top of that, I really hope that's not a thing that lasts for very long, even if it seems hard to see a way out of it at this moment in time. I hope people actually do prove Netflix wrong, and this is why I really want audiences to keep going to the theaters. Because all that phone stuff just matters so much less for a theatrical film. But right now, despite the common misconception around this, it's actually young people keeping theaters alive. Older audiences have largely abandoned them, and that's who used to keep smaller and mid-budget movies profitable. I'm not sure if that change can be reversed, or if eventually those young people will age into wanting to see movies aimed at older viewers in theaters too. I hope they do, because it will be tough watching those third or fourth exposition dumps reiterating the same information, knowing that the movie itself just doesn't trust me to be paying attention. So, did you guys know that I'm under attack by wizards? It's true, tons of websites that had all my information had wizard in their name. There were like 5 of them. It was bizarre. The grim reality is that right now, your personal data is being sold online. Data brokers are collecting your information, where you live, your phone number, your photos, and selling them to anyone with a few bucks. I should know, over Christmas, someone opened a credit card in my name, and it was not fun. That's a huge reason why I was happy to try Delete Me. Delete Me has been a game changer. It removes your data from hundreds of data broker websites, and the results are impressive. It was great scrolling through my report and seeing just how much of my info has been removed. And this isn't just about me. When brokers have your information, they also have details about your family members. Protecting your data means protecting the people you care about too. I trust Delete Me because it actually works, and I recommend it to anyone who values their privacy. Plus, right now you can get 20% off all consumer plans, and if you want to protect everyone, they offer family plans too. Head to joindeleteme.com/captainmidnight and use code MIDNIGHT at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/captainmidnight, code MIDNIGHT.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.